Hey there guys, I am the Six Machine and welcome back to another Warhammer video. If you are a fan of Batman or crazy murderous superhumans with a lust for blood or violence, then you will probably like the next Legion. Today we have got the brutal Night Lords hailing from Nostromo and led by the batshit, literally insane Konrad Kurz. These guys are all about sowing terror in your enemies and then totally overwhelming them with the most savage and, let's be honest, quite often unfair tactics imaginable. If honourable combat is your thing, this Legion is definitely not for you. Their Legion trait to get things rolling with the tone of this army is called a talent for murder. Yep, pretty fitting. And what this does is that when a unit with this rule attacks or shoots against an enemy that is pinned, falling back, or that you outnumber, you get +1 to wound and +1 to your armor penetration for those attacks. This rule is quite obviously incredibly strong. A flat +1 to wound is a huge boost to your damage output, and boosting your armor penetration as well makes it much more likely that you're going to be able to chew through that enemy armor or get an extra chance to do some serious damage against vehicles if you go from AP3 to AP2 or AP2 to AP1 for instance. On some things it won't come up all that often, things like your dreadnoughts are never going to outnumber their opponents obviously, but due to the fact that it works when an enemy is pinned or falling back as well, you can still get this off on pretty much any model in theory, and you will get to use it a lot of the time over the course of the game, I think. It's obviously best on units like your big squads of Marines or Terminators that you can just charge in and completely overwhelm your opponent and bully them into submission with large big squads and do an insane amount of damage to them. So the Night Lord's kind of playstyle is having those bigger squads and just moving around the board, ganging up on the enemy essentially and just bullying them with all your damage output. Having played Night Lords in the current Heresy, this rule is really strong. It's slightly different in current Heresy, but the idea of it is the same in terms of outnumbering your opponent, and it really can be very game changing if you manage to get a big squad into combat with, a smaller squad or an enemy independent character or something, and just get those huge buffs to your damage. It really does allow you to punch well above your weight. To help you get even more out of this rule, the Night Lords also get access to their own unique weaponry, and this is one of the coolest and arguably most famous weapons in the entire Heresy setting. They are, of course, the Chain Blades. The basic one is Strength +1 and AP3 with Shred and Breaching 6+ as its special rules. And what these do is Shred basically lets you reroll wounds. Breaching is, I believe, a way to do more than one wound with an attack. So maybe on a wound roll of 6 or something, it does 2 wounds instead of 1, which will really help you to get through those new 2 wound Terminators much more easily. The Chain Glaive, which is the most famous version of this weapon, gives you +2 strength instead of +1 and is two-handed while still being AP3. And then finally you have the Headsman's Axe, which seems to be a unique named version of a chain weapon, and it's ×2 strength, so you get up to a whopping strength 8 if you put this on just a regular kind of Marine. Being AP3 is already pretty fantastic for cleaving through enemy power armor, but of course with the talent for murder buff, this could be pushed up to AP2, meaning that even against things like Terminators or models with Artificer armor, you could be negating their saves, and this is going to massively boost your damage output against those 2-up save units. So I think on its own, the Chain Blade, the Chain Glaive, and the Headsman's Axe are a really good set of weapons anyway, but when you combine them with a talent for murder, they really do become possibly some of the best melee weapons that any Legion has access to in the entire Heresy setting. They are just so powerful. And of course they have the bonus that they look really badass. They are probably the coolest looking weapon in the Heresy as well. So they've definitely got a load of things going for them that will make you want to use them in your army pretty much as often as you possibly can. Finally, they show off a unique Night Lord's Warlord trait, Flame Master. Again, a very appropriate name. This gives your Warlord the Fear 1 rule, and this gets buffed as enemy units get destroyed, either as casualties or as part of a sweeping advance, and it goes up to Fear 3. And I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that Fear now reduces enemy leadership. That's like the debuff it gives. So Fear 1 would drop it by 1, Fear 3 will presumably drop it by 3. So this can be quite a nasty way to debuff enemy units to make sure that they fail all of those important morale checks and leadership checks that they may be forced to take. On top of that, as we've seen in the other warlord traits, this trait does let you take an extra reaction during your opponent's turn. This time it's during their assault phase, so there is the potential for messing with enemy charges and enemy attack phase things, which is fairly fitting with the idea of the Night Lords being sneaky and dishonorable and underhand when they fight. So I really like that it's not just another movement phase one, this is actually in a phase that is more fitting fluff-wise for the Night Lords, I think. Overall, it's a decently solid warlord trait. I think it's going to really depend just how impactful morale and leadership shenanigans end up being in Heresy 2.0. If there are loads of ways to ignore it and loads of legions that just don't care about morale or leadership, obviously it's going to be rather wasted. But I do think from what I've seen and heard so far, morale and leadership is going to be a bigger part in the game, and fear is certainly something that's going to affect pretty much all the legions in some way or another. So I do think that this warlord trait is going to have some use in most games if you decide to bring it. So there we go, that is the Night Lords. If you enjoy bullying and stomping your enemy into the ground with dirty underhanded tactics and also messing with their morale and making them terrified of your army, there is a lot to love here. And if nothing else, if you are a fan of the gorgeous looking chain weapons, then you might want to consider the Night Lords as your legion in Age of Darkness. But what do you think of these rules? Do you think Talent for Murder will let the Night Lords punch above their weight? And were you hoping for more than just a leadership style shenanigan ability for the Warlord trait? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.